I crossed oceans for this family. I broke my body for this house. And this payment record is what you did with my smile. You are a wicked daughter. You would put your own blood in a cell because of common money?
Adana was a beautiful girl with a very strong heart. She did not want to see her family suffer anymore. Every day, she saw her mother staring at an empty pot. She saw her father sitting on a bench, tired and quiet. Her brothers, Emeka and Chide, leaned against the wall, drained of energy and too weak to play. Adana did not want to sit and cry. She wanted to be a hero. She told herself, I will go to Lagos. I will work and bring money home to my father. She was brave enough to leave her home, ready to change their story. That night, Adana lay on her mat, her stomach cramping so hard it felt like a knife. She stared at the darkness, listening to the crickets. If I don't move, we will all finish here, she thought. But she had no money for a bus ticket. Before the sun rose, she quietly went to see a trusted friend. She explained her plan and begged for a loan to get to Lagos, promising to pay back every kobo once she found work. Her friend, moved by her tears, gave her the money. With the money tucked away, she returned and broke the news. Mama Nkechi's voice trembled. Adana, you don't have any family in that big city. How will you survive? Adana gripped her mother's hands. Mama, God is in Lagos too. I have found a way. Paokon looked at her and whispered, the city is a jungle, my daughter, but a lioness does not fear the forest. Go. The night bus dropped Adana in Lagos with nothing but a small bag. For 3 days she was a wanderer, sleeping in front of closed shops and getting soaked by the rain. By the 3rd day, her skin was covered in grey city dust. She found a wealthy neighborhood and saw a housemaid wanted sign on a massive gate. She knocked, but the gate man tried to chase her away, calling her a dirty beggar. Adana stood her ground. I am not a beggar. I want to work. If I fail, don't pay me. Moved by her grit, he let her in. Mrs. Adeyemi saw the desperation and the honesty in her eyes and gave her a chance. One evening, Adana overheard her boss and her husband talking about their trip to the UK. They spoke about how beautiful the streets were and how much money people could make there. As she listened, a spark lit up in her eyes. She thought of her father's dry throat and her brother's empty eyes. If I can get to the UK, she whispered, I can build my father a palace. From that day, Adana became a woman on a mission. We see her waking up before the sun to scrub the floors and staying up late to make sure every dish was shining. She worked with a smile, even when her back ached. Adana worked for 4 years with the diligence of an angel. She divided her salary into 2 parts. She sent feeding money to the village every month so her parents wouldn't starve, and she strictly buried the rest in a locked box. She didn't buy new clothes or even a bottle of soda to save every kobo for her UK fund. After 4 years, she counted her savings. It was a lot, but not enough for a visa and ticket. Seeing her massive sacrifice, Mrs. Adeyemi was moved to tears. She said, you have the heart of a giant, Adana. The family decided to pay the remaining balance as a reward for her years of loyalty. Adana returned to the village one last time. When she showed them the UK visa and the ticket, her family was in shock. Adana, how did you afford this? They asked, eyes wide. We know how much a housemaid earns. Adana looked them in the eye. I saved every kobo while you were eating. I lived like I had nothing so I could have this today. And my bosses, seeing my hard work, helped me finish the payment. As she prepared to leave for the airport, Mama Nkechi pressed a Bible in her hand. This is your shield, she cried. Paokon blessed her one last time. Build us a roof that the rain cannot pierce. Adana looked at her brothers, promised to send for them, and stepped into the car, not knowing the snakes she was leaving behind. Before the cold, there was the heat. Adana stood at the Nigeria airport, her skin damp with sweat and her heart heavy with a pain she couldn't name. She looked at the crowd, the shouting and the chaos of Lagos one last time. She clutched her small bag containing all her hopes and the prayers of her mother. As she walked toward the plane, she whispered, I am going so that you may live. When the plane lifted, she watched the lights of her country fade until there was only darkness and the sound of the engines. London was not the paradise of the movies. It was grey, wet and biting. Adana still outside the London airport, her thin sweater no match for the wind. The air felt like 1,000 tiny needles against her skin. She had no house, only the address of a friend in Peckham. After a long, confusing bus ride, she found the room, a damp basement shared with 3 other strangers. The smell of mold was a constant companion. She sat on her thin mattress and pulled out her phone. It hadn't been there for a little while when Emeka's message popped up. "Sister, have you reached? Papa needs his heart medicine. The landlord is shouting. Please don't forget us." Adana hadn't even eaten a hot meal, but she felt the invisible leash tighten. The London dream felt like a cold prison. At 4 a.m. while the city slept, Adana was on the bus. Her hands were raw from bleach and industrial soap. After a long struggle to finally get work, she was now cleaning 3 offices before midday, then rushing to a nursing home to wash elderly patients. Her back felt like it was snapping. During her 10-minute break, she ate a cold meat pie. She looked at her bank app. She had £800. Her rent was due and she needed a winter coat. But then a photo arrived from Chidi. It was a picture of Paokon lying on a mat looking pale. "Sister, the doctor says he needs surgery. We are crying." Adana closed her eyes, wiped a tear, and transferred £700 to Nigeria. She would wear 2 sweaters instead of a coat. One day, "Adana, you look like a ghost," her roommate, Funke, said as Adana returned at midnight. "You work all these hours and eat bread and tea. Why?" Adana forced a smile. "I'm building a future, Funke. My brothers found a plot of land. They sent the papers today. We are starting the foundation next month." Funke looked at her with pity. "Be careful, oh. Money changes blood." Adana shook her head. "Not my brothers. We suffer together. They love me." She opened her WhatsApp. "Emeka, I sent the money for the land. Send me photos when the clearing starts." Emeka's reply was instant. "Trust us, big sister. We are your queen. The mansion starts now." The winter in London turned brutal, but Adana's overtime increased. She took on night shift at a warehouse, stacking heavy crates until her fingers went numb. She didn't buy a heater for her room. She just wore 3 shirts to sleep. "This is for the foundation," she whispered to herself. She sent £2,000, a fortune she had scraped together by skipping meals and walking to work to save bus fare. Back in Nigeria, Emeka received the alert while sitting in a loud bar. He didn't call a contractor. Instead, he ordered a bottle of expensive brandy and a platter of spicy goat meat. "To my sister in London," he toasted to a group of cheering friends. He messaged Adana. "The laborers have started digging, sister. The ground is hard, but your vision is coming to life." He sent a photo of a random construction site he found on the next street, pretending it was theirs. Another day, Chidi watched Emeka spend the money with a flickering conscience. "Emeka, should we not at least buy 10 bags of cement?" he asked, eyeing his brother's new designer sneakers. Emeka laughed, throwing a bundle of naira notes at him. "Relax, small brother. London money is like a river. It never stops flowing. If we build the house too fast, the money stops. We must make the process look difficult." Shidi looked at the money, then at his own old worn-out sandals. The guilt vanished. By evening, he was at a boutique buying clothes that made him look like a king. They told their mother that the engineers were busy while they spent the night at a high-end club, spraying cash like rain. Adana's phone buzzed during her short break at the hospital. It was a video. In the clip, Emeka stood in front of a half-finished wall, wearing a reflective vest he'd borrowed. "See, sister, the foundation is solid. We used the best granite." The camera panned quickly, avoiding the fact that the building belonged to a wealthy politician 3 streets away. Adana's heart swelled with pride. She ignored the hunger pangs in her stomach and the hole in her shoe. "It looks beautiful, Emeka," she typed back, her eyes misty with tears of joy. "I will send more next week for the pillars." She felt a sense of purpose. Every ache in her body was a brick in her parents' new home. She didn't see the smack of Emeka's face as he ended the call and went back to his party. The demands from home became like a drum that never stopped beating. "The price of iron rods has doubled, sister. The rain washed away all our sand. We need more." Adana was now pushing her body to the limit, working long hours every day, 7 days a week. She moved to even a smaller, colder room just to save an extra £50 a month. Her skin, once bright and healthy, was now grey with exhaustion. When she called home, Chidi would put their father on the phone. The old man's voice sounded stronger. "Adana, my daughter, I am so proud. Emeka told me the pillars are rising toward the sky. I can almost see my new room." Adana cried, tears of joy. She didn't know that Emeka had been coaching her father, telling him the building site was too dusty for his old lungs to visit, while showing him fake edited photos on a screen. In Nigeria, the building fund was being used for a life of luxury and scandal. Emeka bought a used Lexus car, telling the neighbors it was a gift from a friend. He and Chide became the kings of the local bars. People called them the London Brothers. They spent their days at the beach and their nights at expensive parties. What if she suddenly comes home? Chide asked one night, his voice shaky from too much beer. Emeka just leaned back and laughed. She won't. She's too busy scrubbing floors to buy a plane ticket. And if she asks questions, we will tell her the government is delaying the building permits. She is far away in the UK. What does she know about the Wahala of Lagos? One evening, Adana's friend Funke sat her down. Adana, you have sent over 40,000 pounds. That is enough to build a mansion in Lagos. Let me see the latest photos. Adana proudly showed her the phone. Funke zoomed in on a photo of the roofing stage. Wait, Funke frowned. In this photo, the house has a blue gate, but in the one you showed me last month, the neighbor's wall was yellow. Now it is red. How? Adana's heart skipped a beat. Maybe the neighbor painted it, she said, but her voice was shaking. That night, a seed of doubt was planted. She messaged Emeka, I want a live video call from the site tomorrow. I want to see the rooms clearly. The reply did not come for 6 hours. When it finally arrived, it was a voice note of Emeka crying, Adana, forget the house for now. Papa has collapsed. We are at the hospital and the doctors are asking for 500,000 naira before they even touch him. Adana sat on her cold bed and put her head in her hands. Every time she asked for the truth, a new emergency appeared. Adana stood in the middle of a grocery aisle, her heart hammering against her ribs. Emeka's voice on the phone was full of panic. Sister, the doctors say his heart is failing. They won't even touch him without 500,000 naira deposit. Adana's hands shook, nearly dropping her bread. What about the house money? Use the money I sent for the roofing tiles. Emeka let out a fake sob. The supplier ran away with it. We're at the police station and the hospital at the same time. Please, if you don't send money now, Papa will die. Adana ran to the money transfer shop, ignoring her own rent to send her last penny. In reality, Paokon was never in a hospital. He was sitting on the balcony of a beautiful modern apartment, enjoying a bowl of fresh pepper soup. Emeka and Chidi had used a portion of Adana's money to rent this place for a short time to keep the illusion alive. Before Emeka brought his family to this house, they told the parents, Papa, Mama, look at what your daughter is doing for you. Adana rented this luxury apartment for us to live in comfortably while we finish the main mansion. She doesn't want you staying in that old village house while the big work is going on. The parents were overwhelmed with pride, believing Adana was treating them like royalty. But it was all a trap. To keep the secret, Emeka took the parents' phones. He told them, the network in this new area is bad. Adana is working a top secret job in London and can only call through our special line. Whenever Adana tried to call her mother or father directly, the phones were always switched off. She could only talk to them through Emeka, who stood over the parents, telling them exactly what to say so she would keep sending more money for a mansion that didn't exist. Adana sat in her cold London basement staring at her phone. She had tried to call her father 10 times, but the phone was dead. She tried her mother. Dead. A cold fear began to grow in her stomach. She looked at the photos of the mansion again. Through a window in one photo, she saw a street sign for a completely different neighborhood. If they are in our family house, why is the street sign wrong? And why are their phones always off? She whispered. The doubt was now a fire. She messaged Chidi, I have sent the money for the surgery. Now I want you to turn on Papa's phone. I want a selfie of him in front of the house gate with the house number showing. If I don't see it, I will not send another penny. 3 days passed. No selfie arrived. No message came back. Adana called Emeka's phone. It was switched off. She called Chidi. It rang and rang until the voicemail kicked in. The silence was louder than the London traffic outside her window. They are just busy with Papa, she told herself, but she was pacing her small, cold room like a caged animal. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her hard-earned pounds turning into smoke. She tried calling her mother, Mama Nkechi, but the old woman's phone was also dead. Panic began to claw at her throat. Adana hadn't slept in 48 hours. She looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. She looked 10 years older than the girl who had left Nigeria. The golden ticket to the UK was starting to feel like a curse. While Adana was crying in London, Emeka was the king of the Vibe Lounge in Lagos. He was wearing a gold chain that cost more than Adana's monthly salary. "Another round for everyone," he shouted, his voice booming over the loud music. He had blocked Adana's number for a while to avoid her questions. "When she calms down, I'll tell her I lost my phone," he told the girl, leaning on his shoulder. Chidi, however, was not enjoying himself. He sat in the corner, looking at his drink. Suddenly, a man who lived near their real family land walked up to him. "Hey, Chidi," the man called out. "I passed your sister land yesterday. The weeds are higher than a man's head. When are you people going to clear it?" Chidi's glass nearly slipped from his hand. The truth was hiding in plain sight. Adana sat at her desk in the warehouse, her head spinning. Her supervisor approached her, looking worried. "Adana, you've worked 30 days straight. You are making mistakes. Go home and rest." Adana looked at her bank balance. £2,000. It was supposed to be the money for the interior painting of the mansion. Instead, she opened a travel website. Her heart pounded as she typed in her details. One-way ticket, London to Lagos, departing in 24 hours. She didn't tell her brothers. She didn't call her mother. "I am coming to see my palace," she whispered, her voice trembling with hope and fear. She hit the purchase button. The die was cast. She was going home to see the truth for herself. Adana packed her single suitcase in her cold London basement. Her movements were mechanical. She didn't call her mother or her brothers. She tucked the land papers and the mansion photos into a folder, placing them at the very top of her bag like a weapon. She boarded the bus to the airport, her suitcase at her feet. Throughout the flight, she didn't eat. She just gripped that folder, her mind repeating, "The papers have my name. The papers are real. The house must be there." When the plane touched down in Lagos, Adana pushed through the crowd, her eyes wide and bloodshot from lack of sleep. She entered a taxi and shoved the land papers toward the driver. "Ikorodu, this address, now." Her voice was sharp, filled by fear. The driver noticed her trembling hands and the way she was hyperventilating. "Sister, calm down," he said. "Is everything okay?" Adana didn't answer. She just stared at the fake photos on her phone, comparing them to the dusty road outside. The taxi slowed to a crawl and stopped. "We are here, sister," the driver said quietly. Adana stepped out into the red dust, clutching her papers. She looked left, she looked right. There was no black gate. There were no white pillars. There was only a vast, silent field of elephant grass and a pile of rusted, broken blocks. "Where is it?" Adana screamed, her voice cracking the silence of the street. "Where is my house?" She began to run into the tall grass, tripping over hidden rocks, her London boots getting ruined by the mud. She held the papers up to the sky, shaking them at the empty air. "I sent the money. I have the papers. Emeka, Chidi, where is my house?" She fell to her knees in the dirt, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was confused, her mind spinning. She started checking the papers again, thinking she was at the wrong place, but the neighbor's arrival confirmed the truth. She began to wail, a sound of pure agony that made the taxi driver turn his head away in shame. The London cow had finally realized that she had been butchered by her own blood. After seeing the empty land, Adana rushed to the old family house. She expected to see her father lying in bed, weak from the surgery she had paid for. But when she pushed open the gate, the house was silent. The windows were dusty and the porch was covered in dry leaves. She knocked on the door of her father's room and cried out, "Papa, it's Adana, I'm home." No one answered. The house where she grew up felt like a ghost town. A neighbor heard the noise and came out. "Adana, why are you at this old house?" she asked. Adana's voice was shaking. "Where is my father? They told me he was here, recovering from an operation." The neighbor shook her head. "No, your brother said this house was too local for them. They moved the whole family to a big rented apartment in the town. They call it a penthouse. They left this house months ago." Adana took the address, her movement mechanical, like a soldier going to war. She reached the new apartment building, a flashy complex with loud music pouring from the second floor. She climbed the stairs, her heart sounding like a drum. Through the half-open door, she heard a familiar roar of laughter. It was Mbeka. "The London cow is still milking," he shouted. "She sent another grant for plumbing yesterday." Adana pushed the door open. The room was thick with the smell of expensive cigarettes and fried meat. Mbeka was lounging on a leather sofa, a bottle of Hennessy in his hand, surrounded by two women. Chidi was in the corner, playing a video game on a massive TV. The room went silent as Adana stood in the doorway, her London clothes dusty and her face pale. Mbeka's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the tiled floor. The amber liquid soaked into a rug that probably cost more than Adana's monthly rent in Peckham. Sister, Chidi stammered, dropping the controller. You didn't tell us you were coming. Where is the house, Emeka? Adana's voice was a low, terrifying hiss. Emeka scrambled to his feet, trying to find his tongue. Sister, listen, the government, the land speculators, they took everything. We had to move Papa for his safety. Adana walked to the TV and ripped the power cord from the wall. The photos, Emeka, the white pillars, the balcony. I stood on the land 10 minutes ago. There's nothing but grass. She turned to Chidi, who was shaking. And Papa, is he dying? Or is that another project both of you needed funding for? Before they could answer, the bedroom door opened. Pa Okon walked out wearing a white lace outfit and shining shoes. He looked better than he had in 20 years. Pa Okon froze, his hand still on the door frame. He looked at Adana, then at his sons, and at the lavish spread of food on the table. The lace of his clothes seemed to itch suddenly. Adana, he whispered, his voice cracking. You are home? Adana looked at his healthy face, his rounded stomach, and the expensive watch on his wrist. Papa, they told me you were in surgery, she said, her voice trembling. They told me you were dying, so I would send the money for the roof. Pa Okon looked down at his feet. They told me the money was a bonus from your big job, Adana. They said you were a manager now, that you were earning big money and living comfortably. The bathroom door opened, and Mama Nkechi walked out, her hair freshly braided and smelling of expensive oils. She saw Adana and let out a shriek of joy, rushing to hug her. But Adana stepped back, her arms rigid at her sides. Mama, did you know? Adana asked. Did you know there is no house? Did you know I've been eating bread and water for 7 years so you could live in this rented lie? Mama Nkechi's smile faded, replaced by a defensive frown. Adana, don't be like that. Your brother said the building was on hold because materials had become expensive. Is it a crime to eat well while we wait? We are your family. The entitlement in her mother's voice was a knife to Adana's heart. Adana walked over to the dining table and picked up a receipt. It was for a VIP table at a club dated 2 nights ago. The total was more than she earned in a month of cleaning toilets. She looked at Emeka, who was finally regaining his arrogance. Look, sister, Emeka said, crossing his arms. You are in London. You can always make more. Here in Nigeria, things are hard. We had to survive. Adana slapped him, a sharp, stinging crack that echoed in the silent room. Survive, she screamed. I slept in a basement with rats. I walked until my bones screamed. You didn't survive, Emeka. You bled me dry. She looked at the family she had sacrificed everything for and realized she was a stranger to them. Adana went back to the old neighborhood to clear her head. She sat with the old woman who had greeted her. They were the kings of the street, Adana, the woman said, shaking her head. Every Friday, they brought girls here in a different car. They told everyone you married a millionaire in London who was pouring money on them. People envied your parents. They said Mama Nkechi stopped talking to her old friends because she was now a London mother. Adana felt a deep, oily shame. Her sacrifice hadn't just been stolen. It had been used to buy a fake reputation. Her family hadn't been waiting for a home. They had been performing a play, and she was the unsuspecting financier. Adana received a call from her supervisor in London. Adana, where are you? You missed 3 shifts. If you are not back by Monday, don't bother coming. Adana looked at her phone. She had no money to go back. She had spent her last savings on the flight to Lagos. She was stuck in the very poverty she had tried to escape, surrounded by the people who had put her back there. Adana woke up on the floor of the hotel room, her eyes swollen, but her mind as sharp as a razor. The crying was over. They think I am broken, she whispered to the empty room. They think the London cow has no more milk. She picked up her phone and saw 10 missed calls from Emeka and a please forgive us text from Chidi. She didn't reply. Instead, she called Funke in London. Funke, I need a favor. Don't ask questions. Just send me the contact of that aggressive debt recovery lawyer you mentioned once. Adana met the lawyer, a man named Barrister Adebayo, in a small, dim office. He looked at the bank transfers and the fake photos she had saved. This is criminal breach of trust, sister, Barrister Adebayo said, tapping his pen. But your brothers have spent the money. Even if we jail them, the money won't come back. Adana leaned forward, her voice like dry ice. I don't just want the money, Barrister. I want the assets, the Lexus Emeka drives, the furniture in that penthouse, the electronics, everything my sweat bought, I want it back in my name. And the land, we must freeze that loan before the bank grabs it. Adana sent a message to the family WhatsApp group. I reacted poorly. I am sorry. I have some money left in my UK savings, my emergency fund. I want us to sit and plan how to fix the house properly. The response was instantaneous. Emeka sent dancing emojis. Mama Nkechi sent prayers. They invited her to the penthouse for a reconciliation dinner. Adana arrived with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She watched them eat the expensive jollof rice she had paid for, listening to them make new promises. We will start the foundation on Monday, sister, Emeka bragged. Adana nodded. I know you will, she said softly. She knew that outside, Barrister Adebayo and the police were waiting. The dinner was interrupted by a thunderous bang on the door. Emeka jumped, spilling his wine. Police, open up! 3 officers marched in, followed by Barrister Adebayo. Emeka and Chidi Okung, the lead officer asked. Emeka tried to laugh it off. Officer, there's a mistake. We are decent people. The officer held up a warrant. You are under arrest for obtaining money under false pretenses and grand larceny. Mama Nkechi began to wail, throwing herself on the floor. Adana, do something. Tell them it's a mistake. Adana didn't move. She stayed in her chair, picking up a piece of fried plantain. It's no mistake, Mama. I invited them. As the police led the brothers out in handcuffs, a moving truck backed up to the apartment building. Adana stood on the balcony, watching as men began to carry out the large TV, the leather sofas, and the refrigerator. That's my bed, Chidi screamed from the police van. That's my designer shoe collection. Adana looked down at him, her face a mask of stone. No, Chidi, those are hours I spent cleaning toilets in Peckham. Those are the surgeries Papa never had. Those are the bricks of the house that was never built. Neighbors gathered, whispering and pointing. The London kings were being stripped bare in the streets they once rode. Mama Nkechi grabbed Adana's arm, her face twisted in rage. You are a wicked daughter. You would put your own blood in a cell because of common money? Adana shook her off. It wasn't just money, Mama. It was my life. I gave you 7 years of my youth and you fed me lies. Pa Okon sat in the corner, his head in his hands, finally looking as old as he truly was. Where will we sleep, Adana? He asked. Adana looked at the empty apartment. Back in the old house, Papa, in the rooms that leak. Maybe when the rain hits your face at night, you will remember the daughter you allowed your sons to rob. The police station smelled of old sweat and damp concrete. Emeka and Chili were shoved into a crowded cell. The designer clothes they were so proud of were now stained with dust and shame. Emeka is joking, Emeka whispered, his teeth chattering. She's just trying to scare us. By morning, she will come and pay the bill. But as the hours ticked by and the mosquitoes began their nightly feast, no one came. The other inmates looked at their expensive watches and branded shirts with hungry eyes. You look like boys who have eaten too much, a large man in the corner growled. For the first time in 3 years, the brothers realized that their sister in London was no longer their shield. She was their judge. Back at the penthouse, the rooms were hollow echoes of their former glory. Adana sat on a plastic stool watching the last of the furniture being loaded onto the truck. Barrister Adebayo stood beside her with a clipboard. The car is already at the impound, sister. We have a buyer for the Lexus by tomorrow. The electronics and the furniture will fetch a good price at the second-hand market. Adana nodded, her eyes cold. Every kobo goes into a new account, an account they will never touch. Mama Nkechi sat on the floor weeping loudly, but Adana didn't even look her way. The time for pity had dried up in the London cold. The next morning, Adana stood at the bank with the barrister. The manager looked at the loan document Emeka had signed using the land as collateral. The interest is high, Miss Adana, the manager said, looking at her with a mix of surprise and respect. Your brother was very confident. Adana placed a stack of cash, the proceeds from selling Emeka's car, on the desk. I am paying the principal and the frozen interest today. I want the deed back in my name and my name alone. As she walked out of the bank with the original land documents pressed to her chest, she felt a small spark of life return to her heart. She didn't have a house yet, but she finally owned the ground she stood on. After the bank cleared the loan, using the money from the Lexus sale, Adana looked at the final receipt. There was a small balance left over. Combined with the 2.5 million naira she had forced her brothers to transfer from their phones at the police station, she finally had her life fund. She didn't waste a single kobo. She went straight to the travel agent and paid for the next available flight back to London. Adana went back to her room and packed her single suitcase. She didn't buy any of the usual gifts or food to take back. The only treasure she cared about was the original land deed, which she tucked into a waterproof folder at the very bottom of her bag. As she zipped it shut, she saw her phone lighting up with texts from her brothers begging for bail. She didn't reply. She simply deleted the family group chat and turned the phone off. At Murtala Mohammed Airport, Adana felt a strange lightness in her chest. As she walked toward the boarding gate, she realized she was leaving Nigeria with exactly what she had brought, herself. But this time, she was wiser. She sat in the plane and watched the lights of Lagos disappear beneath the clouds. She knew the London code was waiting, and she knew her job was in danger. But for the first time in 7 years, her sweat belonged only to her. After she arrived at the airport in London, she went straight to her old house in Peckham because she really needed a bed to sleep on. When she knocked, her friend Funke only opened the door a little bit. "Adana, I told you on the phone. I could not wait," Funke said, not looking at her. "Your bed is gone. A new girl paid for 3 months already. You chose to go and fix your brother's mess. Now you have to find your own way." The door closed and locked. Adana was left in the cold outside with her suitcase and a very sad heart. She was very, very tired, but she went to the warehouse at sunrise. She hoped for kindness. She found her boss at the loading area. "Sir, I am back. I can work 3 times as hard to make up for the time I was gone," she begged. Her voice was shaking. The man did not even look up from his papers. "We sent you a notice, Adana. You were gone for 3 weeks, so that means you quit. The office has already closed your file. We cannot take a chance on you again." He walked away, leaving her standing in the rain. The job she had worked so hard for was gone in 1 minute. No home and no job. She spent her first 3 nights riding the buses that drive for 24 hours. She stayed on the top floor of the bus. She held her bag tight and slept for only 20 minutes at a time while the bus drove around London. She was surrounded by people who were also broken and homeless. She looked at her hands, the hands that had sent £40,000 to Nigeria. She realized she did not even have £5 for a hot meal. The success her family talked about was now a woman shivering on a public bus. In Nigeria, the penthouse dream had become a nightmare. No more money was coming from Adana. The landlord threw all their things into the dirty street gutter. Mama Nkechi felt very ashamed. She was desperate. She went to the police station. She had to sell her last beautiful clothes and borrow a little money from someone to pay for a cheap lawyer. When Emeka and Chidi were finally let out of jail, no car was waiting for them. They walked out to see their mother looking 10 years older, standing in the dust with their clothes in a black plastic bag. The family had to get on a crowded, noisy Molue bus to go back to the old village house. The roof was worse than before. The grass on the roof was rotten and the walls were green and dirty. As they walked through the village, the neighbors stood at their gates laughing and pointing. "Where is the mansion?" they asked. "I thought you were kings." Emeka and Chidi now had to sit in the corner of a leaky room, sharing one small bowl of watery gari. Their greed had brought them back to the mud. In London, Adana finally found a tiny space to sleep in a room with 5 other women. She slept on a thin mat on the floor. She took a job cleaning a train station at 2 in the morning. She spent her nights scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets, the jobs she told her family she was too big to do. She lived on cheap bread and tea. Every time she felt like giving up, she remembered the look of the weeds on her land. She did not answer her mother's begging texts. She was learning a hard lesson. You cannot save people who are willing to let you drown. She scrubbed floors for months. Finally, she got a small break. A kitchen manager at a hospital saw that Adana was always on time. He gave her a job as a kitchen helper. It was steady work and she got a warm meal every day. Adana worked with a very strong energy. She did not make friends or go out to have fun. She saved every penny like it was her last drop of blood. She moved out of the shared room and into a tiny studio apartment. It was small, but the door had a lock and only she had the key. Mama Nkechi kept calling. She cried that the brothers were suffering. She said Emeka was now working to lay bricks for other people and Chidi was carrying heavy bags at the market. Adana listened to one message and then deleted it. She felt a cold peace. They were finally learning what it means to work hard for money. She realized that by stopping the money, she was not being mean, she was being fair. She spent her evenings studying for a food certificate to move from the kitchen to the office. A year passed. Adana was promoted to be a leader in the kitchen. She sat in a small apartment eating a hot plate of rice and fish. She looked at her bank account. It was not a huge fortune, but it was hers. She had paid her rent for 6 months early. She was no longer a golden ticket for her family. She was a woman with a real life. She looked at the land paper in her drawer and decided she would never build there. She would keep the land as a reminder of the price of her freedom. The brothers stayed in the village, broken and angry. They had the land, but no money to buy even one bag of cement. They were trapped in a life of hard labor and being poor. Their young beauty was replaced by wrinkles of regret. Mama Nkechi sat on the porch every evening looking at the road, but the daughter who sent the London ring was gone forever. They had traded a lifetime of help for a few nights of fun. In London, Adana walked through a park and enjoyed the fresh air. She had a good job, a clean home, and a heart that was finally healing. She realized that family is not a deal that says you must destroy yourself. She had survived the cold, the hunger, and the betrayal. She was the boss of her own life now. She looked at the sky and smiled. It looked like a clean, new page. Adana ended her story with a simple thought. Trust is a gift, but you must have rules. She had built a house after all, not one of bricks in Nigeria, but a house of dignity and peace in her own soul. She walked home and locked her door. For the first time in many years, she did not dream of the weeds. She dreamt of the future.